So I'm going to be talking about Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now, when I think of Dwight, I instantly think weirdo. But here's a couple of things that I didn't know, okay? In a list of presidents ranking from really horrible person, sexist, racist, owned slaves, and then, pretty cool, Dwight D. Eisenhower is kind of pretty cool. I mean, in like a grandpa kind of way. A couple of fun facts. His name is actually David Dwight Eisenhower, but he decided to go by Dwight because his dad's name is David. This dude is one of 7 boys, and they're all called Ike. Big Ike, Little Ike. So he marries this girl named Mamie. Yeah, she's pretty cute whenever he meets her. This is her whenever she was the first lady. You ever cut your bangs too short? I think she can pull it off. I think it's fine. He proposed to her on Valentine's Day. A true romantic. Dwight and Mamie had 2 sons, but one of them died of scarlet fever whenever he was only like 3 years old, which was very unfortunate. But that was a really big thing in the early 1900s. The one that died, his name, get this, Ike. Can you believe it? Another thing that made him pretty cool was he was actually in the military and he got really high up. He really had no interest in being president until he was basically forced to do it, and then he was like one of the greatest presidents of all time. Dude graduates high school in 1909. Yeah, he old. Then he goes to West Point College, gets an education, graduates in 1915, joins World War I. They think he's a really strong leader, so they end up making him a commander. He never sees any active combat. Come the 1940s, he's a whole general. US joins World War II, and then he's a general again, so he never sees any more active combat, but he does oversee some invasions. He's like, yo, let's invade France and Germany, which turned out to be a pretty good idea because this dude fights on the side of the army that defeats Hitler. He defeated Hitler. It's a pretty cool Dwight. Speaking of invading Germany, Dwight D. Eisenhower was also known as being the legendary mastermind behind D-Day. Then, World War II ends. He's a president at a university in Columbia. That's pretty cool, I guess. And then he's the first supreme commander of NATO. Now, if you don't know what NATO is, around the 50s, everyone was pretty terrified that communism was gonna come to their country and, take over the world. So NATO forms together with Europe, that's the US and Europe. They form together, so they're like, yo, we're gonna protect each other from communism. And it was a pretty cool system that they had going on, and he was the supreme commander of it, which is pretty awesome. Oh yeah, and another weird family thing. His oldest grandson's name was David, which he actually named a camp after him, Camp David. I thought that was pretty cute. He loves his grandson, Anyway, David actually grew up, joined the army and all that, and then he ended up marrying Richard Nixon's granddaughter. Richard Nixon was actually Dwight D. Eisenhower's vice president during his term. I don't know, I found it interesting. Like I said, Eisenhower was a super grandpa dude. One of his favorite things to do was play golf. And his second favorite thing to do, paint. But he's so cute, and I love that. He loved painting just as a hobby, but some people thought it was really good, so they hung it up, and he ended up saying they would have burned this a long time ago if I weren't the president of the United States. He also liked card games. Now, let's talk about why he was such a cool president. So, I don't know about y'all, but whenever I think about US history in the 1950s to 1960s, the first thing that comes to my mind is segregation and Jim Crow laws. Dwight D. Eisenhower actually took some pretty big steps to demolish segregation in public schools. If you've ever heard about the Little Rock Nine, that was a group of 9 black students who started going to a school that was previously all white, and they got super bullied on their way in. Kids would always throw rocks at them and taunt them, and it was just a horrible experience. Well, Dwight D. Eisenhower actually ordered the National Guard to walk them to school for a while actually and keep them safe. So that was a really cool thing that he did. Just exited off the highway, and that reminds me, Dwight D. Eisenhower actually invented an interstate highway system all across America. It was the largest public works project to that date. It created 42,000 miles of highways in the US, and it was mostly created to be used for an evacuation in case of a nuclear war. Everywhere that you see orange lines is where Dwight D. Eisenhower put in a highway. Pretty cool, right? I thought so. Another thing he did was he actually admitted Alaska and Hawaii as states. Having Hawaii as a state was really good because it gave the American Navy access to the naval base there in Hawaii, which was Pearl Harbor. And Alaska just pretty much helped expand the US. It was good for trade and stuff because, fish. Another thing that made Eisenhower such a great president was because of his just serene and peaceful spirit. He just really helped to keep the peace in times of war and racial tensions and the rise of communism. It was a really stressful time to be president. So Korea was going on whenever he was elected into office, and he helped to end the Korean War. Everyone was pretty peaceful, but then came the Cold War. Russia launched Sputnik, which was a huge deal. Then there were all these tensions with Russia. So, Eisenhower helped to create NASA, I'm just saying, he created NASA. And eventually the Cold War kind of died down thanks to Eisenhower and his peaceful grandpa spirit. This man was really involved in foreign affairs. He always liked to help other countries and assist them a lot, but he was good because he didn't overspend. He trusted the nation. He didn't get America into a bunch of debt. Unfortunately, Grandpa Ike's health started catching up with him a little bit, and at the beginning of his second term, he had a heart attack. Unfortunately, he did die in 1969 of heart failure, but this was not while he was in office. This was after he retired, so. He was actually very smart. He was always thinking about the future. A really good president, and like I said, he was cool. Thank you so much for watching and spending the last 5 minutes of your time learning about how cool Eisenhower is compared to all of your lame presidents. Have a great day, and I have to get going because I'm late to something as usual.